Welcome, everyone. Today's talk is called The Winter Blues. My name is Sue Dieterich. I am a counselor in the Counseling and Psychological Service Department. Welcome to today. I think an appropriate talk this time of year. As we get started, I just want to go through what items that we're going to cover. We're going to talk and learn about what the winter blues is. We're also going to learn about something called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. We're going to learn the signs, the symptoms, knowing the difference between the two, as well as what you can do about it. What are some strategies that you can put into play today? So let's get started. Really important that as we think about the winter blues, I think a lot of people consider sadness during this time of the year, and if they have those two features, both this time of the year and the fact that they're feeling sad, that they may have, the winter blues. They might be experiencing it. But really important to know that we all feel sad or lonely or blah, or we don't feel good. Our mood changes at different times of the year and for different reasons. Sometimes we can't always determine what the reason is, but it's really important just to know that that's normal. So not to just jump to identify it may be one of these items, but just as a disclaimer as we get going here. So let's talk about what are some common tenets of what constitutes the winter blues. So yes, one is that it happens this time of the year. Fall to winter months is a common feature where we have shorter days, colder weather. It typically happens in the northern altitude areas, parts of the country that we experience this. Another is the reduction or the lack of sunlight. So if we just think about that for a minute, we think about the fact of what changes and how do things look differently when it's the fall and winter months. It looks different because our days are shorter. We are going to see darkness just more regularly. We get up in the morning, it's going to be dark. We get to work. If we work in an office, we're enclosed all day long. We go home, it's dark again. So we have less opportunity to have that sunlight. So that's one thing. And that can be hard, day in and day out for several months. And just in this area alone, our winters are long, really long. And it could take its wear and tear on us. So if you also think about how good it feels when we have that bright sunny day and we feel the sunshine against our skin, it warms us up, it just brightens our mood, it really changes our disposition. So that lack of sunlight is a big deal. And thinking about those two pieces alone is what's commonly thought of as when we are dealing with the winter blues, okay? But there's a couple other things that play out in that too. We want to also highlight the fact that during that time of the year, sometimes people refer to this as the holiday blues. And the holiday blues is sadness as well, but it seems to be often attributed to the season, the holiday season during the time of the year. And during that time of the year, people might have a hard time being able to be with their family during the holidays, or they may feel this pressure of family obligation. It can go on either end of the spectrum. And that can be challenging, it could be stressful. Just in essence, when we get together for the holidays, I think, people always think it's going to be better, like that things will work out. Maybe those severed or difficult relationships will be better, or they'll treat you better during those times of the year. It's a time of the year that has a lot of expectations to how it's going to play out. And I think many of us kind of consider that, kind of develops that sense of hope during that time of the year. So thinking about that, but on the other spectrum, not just about maybe not being able to be with family during the holiday, where you're missing them and you're not able to be with all of your loved ones. It's on the other side, it's the piece that's associated with maybe the family obligation that you feel, that pressure that you feel that you have to spend time with family. And we all don't have the same experiences of what family means. And it might be very difficult. There's maybe pressure as to what's going on in your life right now when you're with family, or just the family dynamics in general isn't always how you want to spend your time. So feeling that pressure to participate or be a part of it can also be very draining when that isn't something that you're wanting to do. So another piece of this, though, is what else is going on, right? It's the fall, winter, it's the lack of sunlight. It might be connected and related to holiday concerns you may have, but it's also looking at what else is going on in your life, what difficulties or experiences that you may be having that may be wearing on you right now, whether it's just the difficult period you might be going through, maybe you've had a job change, maybe there's a tough financial period you might be experiencing. Any of those kind of things can impact these symptoms that are taking place. As well as, when you think about the financial side, that even plays into the difficulty experiencing the holidays the same way that you typically would. So also consider personal losses, anniversary times of the year where you do feel that pain, whether it's a personal loss of a loved one or someone important in your life, but it could be a loss in a different way. We've all had a lot of losses, especially in the last 18 months with the pandemic, and it could be connected to losing people, to a job change, to moves, unplanned moves, that all feed into that uncertainty and fear that you may experience and feeling sad or down during this time of the year. Some symptoms that are commonly associated with the winter blues is feeling fatigue. Fatigue is feeling overtired, feeling low energy. It has a ripple effect because then it affects how motivated you feel, doing the normal things that you need to do. Like it's harder to do your schoolwork, or it might be harder to do your work for your job, or even conversations with people can be harder. Sadness, we're kind of saying this in general, but sadness can look different for different people. Sadness could just be down and gloomy. Sometimes it may play out where you may experience and be more irritated or angry. A lot of times in children, you may see more it being an irritated, crying. We talked about the difficulty concentrating, staying focused is a big piece that you would notice. So as a student, you'll notice it if you're trying to get your work done, and typically you can get through several subjects in a night, but you're finding that you're reading the same sentence over and over again where you can't stay attentive to what you're doing. And you may see it as well in your work setting where you're just not as efficient as you normally are. It also will show up in your sleep, disruption in sleep. Then that can either look like sleeping more, or it can look like a break in your sleep, or restless sleep, or difficulty staying asleep, or, So it kind of shows up in different ways, but any of these features are signs and symptoms of the winter blues. So I want to add a piece about sunlight, because we already said before, like the shorter days, darker will put us in a mood, right? And it'll change our disposition. But another important thing I think to look at is how physically you're affected by the reduction in sunlight. So when you have less sunlight, it actually overproduces melatonin, and that will make you feel more tired or exhausted, less energy. And that's important because it actually helps kind of normalize that there are a lot of reasons that this is happening. As well as we're going to get into talking about seasonal affective disorder in a minute, but if you experience that, you have trouble regulating your serotonin level, which helps balance out your mood. So those two features just kind of give you a little more insight on how the sunlight and the reduction of sunlight affects you physically. Okay, so we're going to learn about seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. So it's more than just being sad. Yes, commonly happening at this time of the year, the fall, winter months, but it's more severe. The sadness is more severe, and it may show up where you may have that sadness or inability to get going, but it might also show up in other ways too, where you're just more tearful and you don't know why. And really, seasonal affective disorder is a form of depression. It is under the umbrella of depression. So it'll show up as well, disturbances in your sleep, and you'll notice that you want to sleep a lot more. You just have a really hard time, even when you do sleep longer, you're not feeling rested, but you want to sleep more, and then it causes you to not get up at normal times or get your normal daily activities completed in the same way you typically would. But it can also affect you where you have those fluctuations in your sleep, where you're not sleeping as much, or it's just unrestful sleep. Loss of interest. Loss of interest, you're just not as open to doing the activities that you typically would, you know? Like it may not sound as good to get together with friends, or it may not sound as good to go to a movie, or just some of the typical things that you would have enjoyed. It causes an increase in your appetite. You have it feeds into wanting to eat more. You have more of cravings for carbs, high sugar items, as well as there's a tendency to isolate, not want to participate in social situations. And we've just we're just coming out after 18 months of our pandemic, which already was a situation where many of us were isolated. And during this time of the year, it's really important to be in tune to the fact if this is something that you're seeing again, because it became, I think, for many a habit. But the difficulty spending time with people, so you withdraw, as well as important inability to enjoy things the way you used to enjoy. Important because noticing a shift. And you know what, I don't enjoy going to my bingo club anymore, like I'm not as into that. Or I used to feel better when I would take a walk, or when we would go out to eat. It's just something that I just feel blah, and I can't engage in the same way. You can't engage in the same way or interact in the same way that you have in the past. So if the symptoms are severe, it's not uncommon that you start to self-medicate with alcohol and drugs. Alcohol is a depressant, so that just feeds into increasing sadness. As well, another symptom that plays out is that you may have ideas of self-harm or suicide, and that may start out as just thoughts of, maybe I don't want to be here, or it would be better. What difference would it make if I wasn't here? And those may just be words or thoughts, but it's important to look at this when we're looking at the entire picture of what you're experiencing and the need and the importance of seeking help. So basically, when it falls into this category and it's more under the umbrella of depression, it limits your normal functioning and your ability to be motivated. So that's a key way to notice if you can't do or you're unable to do the same things that you typically would. Like just getting up and going in the day can be very and extremely difficult for someone who's experiencing seasonal affective disorder. It can be very difficult, so that's obviously an effect on your not being able to get up as easily. Maybe you find that you're not getting up and showering as regularly, or even getting to work can be really difficult, or you find that you're calling off work or getting there late. These things are important to pay attention to. So it's that it affects your daily living, your ability to control and feel motivated is affected. It can lead to an increase in depression or clinical anxiety. So it's important that even if you think this is only happening at this time of the year, that you get it checked out. The main difference when you look at the winter blues and you look at SAD is that the winter blues, it's like on a continuum of depression. So sadness is at the lower end of the continuum and depression is at the higher end. And just being able to understand that difference, where when it's sadness, you might feel less motivated and have sleep or eating issues or concentration. But when it moves closer to the side of depression, then you're noticing how it's affecting your day-to-day and how it's interfering with your day-to-day. So it's really important to notice that. But here's the thing, is when we are in that state and we are experiencing more of the seasonal affective disorder, we also, when we're depressed, we get tunnel vision. So it's really hard to see that as well. And you may find that others may be pointing it out to you, and it's not always too easy to hear that. So just to give you a little statistics on this, is research shows that women tend to experience SAD 4 times more than men do, and that the people who are most affected by SAD are between the ages of 18 and 30. For winter blues, approximately 14% of Americans experience winter blues, and a study by NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness, showed that 64% of people with mental illness report that the holidays are harder and their conditions are worse, and that makes perfect sense. So you see some high numbers here on the percentages of 68% feel financially strained, 63% too much pressure, 57% unrealistic expectations, and 50% unable to spend with loved ones. All of those are just, reinforcing, I think, what we know, but it just reinforces the message, the impact that sadness or winter blues or SAD can have on different areas in our life. So, but let's talk about what we can do about it, because there is a lot of things that you can do and modify in your day-to-day to help improve symptoms. First is take a break from the news. We're inundated with news, often negative news. Not all of us, I think a lot of us just kind of go through our day not necessarily paying attention. They may get home, turn on the TV, but a lot of other ways we're being inundated with our computer, with social media. We get the news a lot of different ways, and not all news is accurate. It's really important to pay attention to that, because when we're in this place where we're feeling down or in a gloomy mood, then we're hearing all the day-to-day events, and that includes everything with the pandemic, the crime that's going on. It can go on. And there might be a few positive things, but more so it's the negative news. And so it's just noticing and being aware of it and kind of putting your own lines or boundaries down on how to use and how to access the news. I think a lot of us still want to know what's going on, but being able to do it in a way that lets you be more in control of when you experience it and how long you listen to it. Another is consider your food choices. Your food choices can have a bearing on how you feel. even in general, if we weren't talking about this time of the year, the food you intake makes a big difference. So just thinking about putting more protein into your diet at your meals can curb or reduce the incidence of wanting to have cravings for sugar and carb kind of foods, which just, cause us to eat a lot of empty calories. As well, because you're losing a lot of vitamin D with a lack of sun, increase vitamin D in your foods. OJ, milk, yogurt, other kind of fishes with fatty fishes have an increase in your vitamin D. I'm sure there's a lot more too, but just kind of hone into that to notice if that can help, even if, going to your doctor may help to be prescribed some vitamin D, but that's, something to be evaluated if that's a benefit. As well, think about we talked about don't isolate yourself. So being alone doesn't help. Let me stop for a minute too, because I'm realizing as I'm kind of going down this list that you want to look at these different recommendations or suggestions and know that maybe some of them will speak to you more than others, but that some of them will be more useful at different times, and to know that you have several to use or that is going to be useful. So not isolating yourself, it's just being cognizant of how much time you may be isolating and not spending time with people, just knowing the supportive people in your life, or maybe not even just the family, friends, but also thinking about just not being alone, like going places or doing activities, being part of a group, noticing if you now too, with the pandemic, if your job now has now different, where now you're at home all the time, that's another reason why you're not spending time with people. So trying to consider that in how to engage. And I think we could be quite creative now about, even if there's still a lot of fear with getting together with people, how you could be creative with calling people on the phone, having a Zoom call, or with a group. I know that there were lots of groups that were going on and continuing during the pandemic, and I think a lot of those new things that popped up because of the pandemic are continuing on in the way of Zoom groups. You may not want to go out in the bad weather, but you might be able to access a book club or a knitting club or a club of some interest to yours, or even a yoga exercise class through Zoom, and allowing you to connect even on some level with people. Think about your sleep routines. Sleep routines are something that's really important. We already talked about the difficulty, like where you're sleeping too much or you're not sleeping enough. Well, thinking about, what does your routine look like? Do you have any kind of, I go to bed at a certain time kind of system in place? I really encourage you to consider it a time period near the end of the day where you're starting to wind down. Whether you choose that at 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm gonna get ready for bed. That means getting in your pajamas, brushing your teeth, doing all those things, but turning off technology, turning off those things that might heighten how you feel. Maybe it's a time where you might read in bed or do a devotional or whatever it is that's comforting. Maybe listen to calm music. It's not uncommon, especially with being a student, that you might find yourself staying up pretty late at night to study, and you may either be studying and falling asleep on the couch, or you may be in your bed doing this. So trying to have that separate place for where you go to sleep and where you do other things like homework can be very helpful. Another is just to eat and drink in moderation, okay? And there's nothing wrong with having a glass of beer or a glass of wine, but do it in moderation, because it is something that does, number one, it's not good for you to have too much, but number two, it is a depressant as well. Physical activity. I know everyone talks about physical activity, But when you think about physical activity, it's something to get your blood moving. It is also something that increases your endorphins. It's just like a happy chemical in your body. And it's really important that you think of, how can I be creative, even if I may not be someone who likes to exercise per se, but maybe it would help if I would do a brisk walk. Or, you know, I always try to think about the fact that it's cold. Not everyone wants to be outside. If you want to be outside, great, get outside. Whether you go to a park or a place that makes sense for you. Another is, though, think about inside places, you know, whether it's here where you can walk, or a place that you work. And if it seems too long to start with a 30-minute kind of walk, break it down into small pieces. You know, kind of in a break time, take 10 minutes and do a nice brisk walk. But don't rule out other things that might constitute physical activity, because, you know, maybe it's doing, maybe it's something more aerobic where you like to be on a treadmill, or you want to be at a gym, and that's totally fine. Or maybe you just go on to like a YouTube link and do a yoga or some kind of, you know, Pilates class. Whatever it is that kind of makes sense for you, just keep in mind, how do I find something that's interesting to me? That's always been something that I've been told, you know, it always takes a while to get back on the horse and work out again, or try to do something physically active. But even if you look at the fact that you may do certain kind of physical activities like biking or running, and maybe this time of year doesn't make sense for that, just think about the different times of the year, how you may need to adapt it to fit your interests and your comfort level, so you're warm as well. So another area is looking at your routine. Routine is really important. When we're feeling down, we're less motivated, it's hard to get going in the day, it really helps to establish a routine. Having different activities that are blocked in your day and you know you have to do. So whether it's something you have to do, like I have to go to school or I have to go to work, but maybe it's also I'm going to get together with friends, or I'm going over to my mom's house. It allows you to not have to think about it and just go. It helps you look forward. It helps you look forward to something, but it also helps you know what's next. Because when we're not motivated, we're kind of not focused on what our schedule looks like. Setting realistic expectations and goals, really, really important. We already talked a little bit about the fact that if we were talking about the holidays, that's an easy one that you get caught up on, about having high hopes, how those interactions will take place. But what it does is, when it, just in general, because it could be about anything in life, right? Like whether we are looking for a job right now, we don't have a job and we're interviewing a lot, or whether we have to find new housing, or just a relationship change. It could be a lot of things right now. And so one thing is when we start to have unrealistic expectations about when you're going to get that job, or how that conversation is going to take place when you are interacting with a loved one, whatever it is, then we set ourselves up for disappointment. There's nothing wrong with wanting things, but it is important to step back and learn, how do we set realistic expectations? How do we drop it down a notch? So even though we may have a really difficult relationship with a family member, and we know we're going to be seeing them, and we would like it to be better or improved, how to step back and know if there's been a history that this has been the situation for a long time, to take a couple steps back as to, you know what, just enjoy the moment, just enjoy or be in the moment, and how not to develop that. Sometimes we need to coach ourselves during that, but that's a really important and helpful thing, because it also, being disappointed just feeds feelings of sadness and disappointment and loneliness. Support system. A support system, by definition, is defined by feeling that you have supportive people in your corner, that you have people that you can count on. And we all have a different perspective of what that looks like and what that means. But a lot of times when that question is asked, I get answers like, well, my support system is my family, my friends, a good friend or a neighbor, whatever it is. And those are usually the common ones, but then you'll hear other exterior ones too, of other people that are still somewhat in your life in different ways, whether it's just people you see every day. But the importance of keeping in mind about, do you feel supported by these people, and having a support system? It goes a little further into knowing that how sometimes people can be helpful and sometimes people can be unhelpful or less helpful. And knowing the difference between that can be very important in reducing your stress, improving your mood. If you're not feeling supported by the people in your life, whether it's you sharing personal information and feeling like whenever you share this with your sister, all you get is what you're doing wrong or what you should be doing or that it's your fault. Well, that's going to feed into you feeling poorly about yourself, not feeling that she understands what's going on. And it's really important to know, who are those people that I trust and I can talk to? But even the people who may not fit the bill for being able to share your most personal part of your life, they might be helpful in other ways. They might be the person to help you help out and pick up some food at the grocery store or pick up your kids from the bus stop. But they might be someone who might be helpful just to get outside and go for that exercise. They might be good at helping you stay committed to that. So keep in mind how the support system can be different, and you may be able to use different parts of what, like you might be able to receive, feel supported by your people in your life in different ways. So just being able to hone in and kind of notice how they're helping, how they're not helping, is a good start to trying to direct that differently. Seeking sun. We talked about the seeking sun, but sometimes people might feel like you can't do a whole lot because it is winter. How am I supposed to, get sun when I only, it's only light for so long? But number one, you can open curtains or shades. That could help. You could also maybe even change how things are laid out at home. You might try to brighten up a room, maybe increase the lighting in rooms. Color can make a difference on just brightness and feeling more happy in your place, as well as there is artificial light, like a phototherapy or light therapy, that if you do it regularly, that can really help curb your blah or just, that lack of motivation that you may feel. So any of those kind of things could be helpful. Lastly is seeking professional help. Sometimes that's really hard for people to seek help. And, we talked about a wide spectrum of where sadness may be, whether it's winter blues or seasonal affective disorder. But the importance of, number one, being able to talk to someone, kind of unload what you're experiencing. Sometimes we may not feel we can do that with people in our life, and going to a professional is someone separate from your life, and it just can be very valuable and feeling supported in some way. The nice thing about what we've dealt with and the changes that we've experienced with the pandemic, it's actually opened up the door to receiving therapy in different ways. So now, not only do you go for a face-to-face appointment, you can also have a Zoom appointment or a teletherapy appointment, and it's really helped reduce barriers for people being able to access mental health services at this time. It might feel much more comfortable and less intimidating to be in your own home having an appointment versus having to go to an office, as well as convenient in being able to get there. So that's one thing, but I'm also think about support groups, because there's a lot of support groups out there, and that can look like they're not all led by mental health professionals, but they are supportive types of groups that exist. So it could be a group for grief. It could be a group for caregivers. It could be a group for maybe an issue you may have with your child, like, you know, if you have a child that's on the autism spectrum, or it could be for a variety of reasons that people are getting together in a group to support each other. So consider these different options that may speak to you, and just the importance of seeking help when you are feeling down. You know, right here at Tri-C, up here is the link for the counseling, the personal counseling that is available for short-term counseling. I think it's up to 6 sessions. Or you can call 216-987-6000 and choose your campus to access a counselor. And please also note that we have psychologists on hand as well, Dan Brigio or Laura Moncrief at 216-987-5506, or Donna Rumenick, 216-987-3900. Those numbers are for scheduling appointments. Really important to know that you have access. This is a free service for you here at Tri-C. And just the importance, if you are feeling sad, you need to unload, or if it's more serious, it doesn't matter what it is, anyone can assist to support you. If it's an emergency, contact the Cuyahoga County Crisis Hotline at 216-623-6888, or the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK-8255. These are really important numbers, and I did want to just highlight a few things that are available to you here at Tri-C from Help Is Here, where you can even access more of these kind of resources. Help Is Here is a suicide prevention resource here at Tri-C. www.tri-c.edu/help is here. But I want you to also know that some of the things we've talked about today are accessible, and you'll find more information on this site. If you want to do a mental health assessment, like just a self-assessment, you can do that. Understanding more about different mental illnesses, support groups, it has a whole list of a variety of support groups. 24/7 texts and chat lines are really important. Again, you know, sometimes we just need someone to talk to. And if we don't feel like we have that support in our life, and that can happen for many of us, or we just need to talk to someone at 1 a.m, there are text lines that are available for that. There is an area on relaxation tips, kind of can talk about some of the things that we talked about today, but more in depth into relaxing or bringing down stress. And there is a downloadable mobile app that can be very helpful to have on your phone. So that is the end of our talk today. Thank you very much.